Hey, all you cool cats and kittens, it's your favorite history teacher back at you again with another historical video. Today, we are continuing on that World War II train, and we're going to get into the thick of it today because I believe today is actually like the longest lecture in class that we would ever have. So buckle up. It's going to be a doozy. All right. So here we have the Axis advances. Chapter 14, section 2. We're nearing the end here, people. Nearing the end. Almost there. So I'll wait for this to load because I believe if we want to preview how many slides we're going to discuss today, as you see, these are all pictures that don't have names. 106. So 76 slides. Woohoo! Let's get into it. All right, that was your warm-up. Objectives, we're going to trace the course of World War II, obviously, with 76 slides. We're going to look at all the information on how the Nazis systematically murdered 6 million Jewish civilians. So we're going to take a look at that too. All right, so war starts officially. I misspoke in the last lecture that I said, 1937, the war started. My bad. War starts September 1st, 1939. Nazi forces invaded Poland with the power at the backing of Hitler's blitzkrieg. That's how you say it. That's how you pronounce it, blitzkrieg. Where what the blitzkrieg is like, what does it stand for? It's like lightning war, right? And it utilized the improved tank and air power technology to strike a devastating blow against the enemy. So the way it would work, they would first use the German Luftwaffe, which is the German Air Force, Luftwaffe, say that again, Luftwaffe. And they would bomb airfields, factories, cities, dive bombers fired upon troops and civilians. Second, you would have fast-moving tanks and troop transports push their way through the defending armies. And in this case, the defending Polish army, encircling whole divisions of troops, forcing their surrender like that. While Germany attacked from the east, remember Stalin signed a Nazi-Soviet pact with Hitler, and they would split up Poland. So while Germany attacked from the east, Poland's getting invaded from, while Germany attacked from the east, Stalin's attacking from the west. Stalin's invading eastern Poland. Hitler's invading western Poland. You know what I mean. Grabbed lands promised to them under the Nazi-Soviet pact. Within a month, Poland was no more. And based on their location and speed of the attacks, Britain and France could do nothing but declare war on Germany. So notice they declare war on Germany, not the Soviet Union. Because they see the Soviet Union, or they see Germany as the main aggressor. Hitler, evil. All right, so this is a representation. I believe this is from, I don't know. I Googled a long time ago. I Googled blitzkrieg, and this kind of shows airplanes, tanks, and soldiers. So I don't even think this is, this isn't a, I think this is actually a game. It says blitzkrieg developer. Who knows? All right, so you get the picture of what a blitzkrieg is. All right, so there's more takeovers. So that winter, Hitler didn't have much for his troops to do. The Soviets, however, got busy. They got busy. They took over the Baltic states of Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Remember those? And parts of Finland. And they were to have Soviet military bases there. However, during the first winter, the French dug along the line called the Maginot Line and waited for Germany to attack because they would They knew Germany was going to invade, so they heavily fortified this area called the Maginot Line, where they thought they knew they were going to attack. Britain sent troops to wait with them. And some reporters referred to the quiet of the war as a phony. Remember that? You big fat phony. And called it a phony war. They called it a blitzkrieg, because they're sitting and doing nothing. However, April 1940, Hitler launched his blitzkrieg against Norway and Denmark, which almost immediately fell right away. And the next was to smash through the Netherlands and Belgium. So while, the Soviet Union's taking care of like north, what is there northeast to them, right? Because Finland attaches, right? Hitler goes north as well from Germany, and then he goes north, and then he goes south. So this is, remember, Germany borders France, and this is the area where they thought they would come through, called the Maginot Line. Don't know why they didn't think, these are all, the dotted areas are weak fortifications. Not to say that they didn't have fortifications there, but this was heavily fortified. You ain't getting through there, right? And they was wrong. So wrong. And this is the explosion of, not explosion, but the path of German takeovers. They go 1940, Denmark, Norway. Then they go Netherlands, Belgium. Then they go Austria, 1941. Poland, 1930, 1941. This much to come. And here's the Maginot Line again. So you have the miracle of Dunkirk. In May, German forces surprised the British and French troops by attacking through the Ardennes forest in Belgium, an area that was supposed to be, quote, invasion-proof. By bypassing the Maginot Line, German troops just poured into France like ants on a picnic basket. The retreating British forces were soon trapped between the Nazi army and the English Channel. I say British, also French. In a desperate gamble, the British sent all available naval vessels and merchant ships, fishing, and even pleasure boats, aka yachts, across the channel to pick up stranded troops off the beaches of Dunkirk. Despite the German air attacks, this ragtag armada ferried more than 300,000 troops safely into Britain, and this heroic rescue boosted British morale. And that's the Ardennes Forest, if you remember, to this right here, right in this area. So kind of off the edge of the Maginot Line. And you have the movie Dunkirk, which doesn't have, hopefully you've probably seen this movie, but Mr. Ovalle does not. It is kind of accurate, and yeah, but there's just so little dialogue, and the dialogue, there's the trailer if you want to see it. It's an intense movie, no doubt. And here you got waiting for my boat, like they're literally on the beaches waiting in lines, swimming into, you got little boats that they would row across the channel, presumably to bigger boats out into the deeper sides. But as you notice, these yachts don't have like mortars or flak guns attached to them. So when they get shot at, they can't really fire back unless the soldiers bring their guns with them, really. Anywho, meanwhile, in France, the German forces headed south towards Bari, Italy then declared war on France. Finally, Mussolini steps in and attacks France from the south. The overrun and demoralized French eventually surrender. And June 22nd, 1940, Hitler forced the French to sign the surrender documents in the same rail car that the armistice was signed in World War I. People don't forget, especially Hitler. He ain't gonna forget that. So the original armistice that, you know, supposedly ended the war in World War I, the armistice which has no real sides that were, you know, chosen. There's no winner, no loser, right? But you know the ending of World War I kind of led to the rise of Hitler and the Nazis. Let's be frank with it. Following the surrender, Germany occupied northern France, and they set up a, quote, puppet government at Vichy called the Vichy government. So southern France is kind of free, kind of not. Some French officers that escaped to England are going to set up a government in exile there. They're led by a man named Charles de Gaulle, and he and the Free French worked together to re-liberate their land. Re-liberate? Just liberate. So in France, some resistance fighters would use guerrilla tactics against the Germans, you know, hit and run, hide and seek, tag your it. I don't think they'd be tag your it. Here are the French giving up. Here is the occupation of France. Notice 1940, basically the entire war. Like, not only did France already had, you know, World War I fought in their country, you know, and now this is the free zone, but it's not really. And then Italy gets some part of it, okay? Italy gets some part since they attacked right here. Hitler paying his respects to Napoleon. And I just want to show how big this tomb was for Napoleon. And these are normal sized people. And look at Napoleon's tomb. Squad goals. Hitler taking a walk through Paris. And if Hitler had an IG at the time, hashtag no filter. Look at me, I took over France. All right, Operation Sea Lion. So there are a couple operations you guys need to know. And one of them is Operation Sea Lion. So with the French down and out for the count, Britain stood alone with Western Europe. Hitler was sure Britain would soon surrender with France, their buddy, gone. And, you know, they're not partners with the Soviet Union. So it's like really just those two. But a man named Winston Churchill, our guy, replaced the clumsy Neville Chamberlain, and he had other plans. He was elected Prime Minister of England. With this change, Hitler prepared for Operation Sea Lion, which would be, in theory, an all-out invasion of Britain. So in preparation, he would launch massive airstrikes against the island nation to soften them up to then invade. That's the plan. Soften them up, invade, take over, right? Beginning in August 1940, German bombers began a daily helping of bombings on England's southern coast. And for a month, Britain's Royal Air Force, the RAF, valiantly defended their country against the German Luftwaffe. Then Germany will change their tactics and bomb major cities like London instead of these military targets. And they just said, F it, we're going to bomb you anyways. So in theory, Operation Sea Lion, again, attack the southern coast. Okay, attack, bomb, bomb, and then go forward. I don't know what this line is meant to do, but it's a map. What does it say? Second objective. Oh, the second objective was to get here. First objective to get there. Mr. Vai can read a map. Okay, here's a picture of a German Luftwaffe plane, and this is London. This is the London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. The Blitz, German bombers soon appeared over London September 9th, 1940. So basically a year later after the war started, France is already taken care of, and England's getting attacked. All through the night, there would be relays of aircraft showering high explosives and firebombs over the capital. This bombing continued for 57 nights in a row, and then sporadically until the next May. September to October is 1, November 2, December 3, 8 months. 8 months. So basically 2 months of torrential downpour of bombs. Bomb, 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 bomb. And then 6 months later of sporadic attacks. These bombings over London and other British cities became known as the Blitz, not the blitzkrieg, not a part of Operation Sea Lion. You could almost call it the battle for Britain. And much of London would be destroyed. Thousands died. It is what it is. Here's some pictures of a British city. I don't believe this is London. It might be, but totally decimated. And here's in London, because that's Big Ben and the House of Parliament. They got a close call, right? KCCO, if you're familiar with that acronym, you kind of know what it means. London did not break under the Blitz. Defiantly, Parliament continued to meet. Citizens would carry on to their daily lives, seeking protection and shelter, and emerged to resume their routines when the all clear sounded. So there would be alarms when they would have lookouts and they would see German planes coming. They would sound the alarms. They'd go into their bunkers. They would hide. They would throw shades over their windows because when they attack at night, if you have your lights on, you're a target. You're a target to the Germans. But if there are no lights on in the city, Germany they don't know where they're, which is kind of bad because you could be mistakenly bombed at, but at the same time it protected most of you. So yeah. And even the British King and Queen chose to support Londoners by joining them in the bomb shelters rather than fleeing to their countryside manors in the north. So it's all about boosting British morale. Here you have King, I think, is he King George? No, I don't know. I can't remember. Oh my. There will always be in England. England will never be broken. And when the king and queen come to your bunker, you're going to be like, oh my God, they do care about us. And remember, they're not the real leaders of their country anymore, right? They're just the figurehead. Constitutional monarchy. Keep calm and carry on. KCCO, this is when it happens. Not keep calm and chive on like back in the day. It was keep calm and carry on. All right. Hitler's first failure. There are three. There are three? I think there are three. Much like Napoleon, huh? Anyways, German planes continued to bomb until May 1941. Contrary to Hitler's hopes, the Luftwaffe couldn't gain air superiority over Britain. The British morale had not broken. And in fact, bombing only made the British more determined to turn back the enemy, and Operation Sea Lion was a failure. Yeah. Failure. All right, North Africa. So the Axis armies are going to then push into North Africa and the Balkans. September 1940, Mussolini orders forces from Italy's colony in Libya to attack into Egypt. The British soldiers would hold off these invaders. So Hitler, coming to the aid of Mussolini, sent one of his more brilliant commanders, General Erwin Rommel, the Desert Fox, aka that's his nickname, Desert Fox, to North Africa. He would lead to a string of successful takeovers in 1941 and 42 and push the British back across the desert towards Cairo in Egypt, the capital. That's Erwin Rommel. And here is some Libyan attacks. Here's Libya pushing them all the way back to Cairo. I don't have Cairo on here because I forgot. But yeah, the red line are roads. I don't even know what the red dots. I imagine the red dots are cities slash, excuse me, battles. Okay, the Balkans. So in October 1940, Mussolini invaded Greece. They encountered some stiff resistance in 1941. And again, they encountered some stiff resistance. And again, in 1941, Germany is going to come aid again with reinforcements. Both Greece and Yugoslavia were added to the growing Axis empire. However, Greek and Yugoslav guerrillas would plague the occupying forces. Meanwhile, Bulgaria and Hungary said, to hell with it, we'll join the Axis powers. And by 1941, the Axis controlled most of Europe, except the nations that declared themselves neutral. They want no part of it. And if these countries weren't going to, side with Hitler, you're going to get invaded unless you weren't neutral. And if you weren't neutral, you're getting invaded. I just said that. So Italy, notice Italy's on this side, on the left side. You have the Adriatic Seas in between. So then they invade through Albania and down. Okay. That's the Balkan campaign. And here's Europe. A horrible map. But so this is Soviet Union, taking care of business in Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, parts of Finland. You have Norway and Denmark under German control, France, northern Belgium, and this is the Free France, and Spain, Portugal, Turkey stayed out of it. And you have Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria under, in the Axis, but I don't know why this isn't colored, shaded in. So, basically the entire map, except for Switzerland, Spain and Portugal, and Sweden, and a little bit of Finland. The entire map is taken care of. However, hashtag marriage over. After Hitler's failure in Britain, he will turn his military might eastwards toward the Soviet Union. And in 1941, he made null, the Nazi-Soviet pact by invading the Soviet Union in what is known as Operation Barbarossa. Operation Barbarossa. He wanted the raw materials from the Ural Mountains, the forests of Siberia, and the wheat from the Ukraine. And he also wanted to crush the threat of communism in Europe and defeat his rival Stalin, who, we all know the Nazis are the forever enemies of communists. So it's only, or not Nazis, fascists. That's their real enemy. And they want to get rid of them. Remember that picture I showed you with like Hitler shaking, that cartoon? Hitler shaking Stalin's hand, but both of them having a gun held behind their backs. Well, it comes true. So he unleashed a new blitzkrieg for the Soviet Union. 3 million. Remember when Napoleon invaded then Russia with his grand old army of 500,000? Hitler almost triples that. 3 million German soldiers invaded, caught Stalin unprepared, and the army were still suffering from Hitler's purges that wiped out many of its top officers. The Soviets are going to lose 2.5 million soldiers trying to defend. As they were forced back, Soviets destroyed industrial factories, farm equipment, and burned farm fields to keep them out of their hands, learning something from Napoleon's mistake, using some scorched earth tactics, scorched earth policies, burning everything in the path of the Germans, leaving them nothing behind. However, they couldn't stop this German war machine, and by autumn 1941, Germany was ready to take Moscow and Leningrad. Can't take the namesake city of Lenin. Hell no. So this is the Operation Barbarossa. We're going to attack Leningrad, Moscow, and Stalingrad. Here you have some I want to say this is an actual picture because these look like normal. And yeah, you got tanks running through the wheat fields on their way to Russia. Hashtag winter is coming. Then the German war machine stalled. Like Napoleon's Grand Army in 1812, General Winter caught the Germans unprepared. Early December 1941, temperatures will plunge to 40 degrees below zero. Thousands of German soldiers will freeze to death. The Soviets will also suffer appalling hardships. In September, the 2-year siege of Leningrad began. Food would be rationed. You would have 2 pieces of bread each day, despite desperate Leningrad civilians, however, will eat anything because as you get starved out, you resort to whatever you got. So they would boil wallpaper because it was said to contain potato flour, so they could have some potatoes so they could eat. Although 1 million civilians will die in the city, Leningrad did not fall. And Stalin will urge for help from the French and British government to open up a second front to relieve the pressure that the Soviets are receiving. Because although they kind of have a control in North Africa, they have Europe locked down. And so the brunt of it are the Soviets, and they're just getting attacked. The French and British said that they couldn't help right away, but the 2 different sides said that they would agree to help each other, Britain and Stalin. Here's some destruction of Leningrad, more destruction of Leningrad, more destruction of, I don't know if this is Leningrad, but maybe this is just some Russian city. All right, so now we have the beginnings of the Holocaust. Both Germany and Japan were set out. They both had plans of creating a new order within the empires of Europe and Asia. Hitler's beliefs grew out of his racist obsessions. As his forces conquered Western European countries, he set up puppet governments that were to be a part of his Aryan race, the light-skinned European, the quote-unquote master race. The Slavs of Europe were an inferior race, and they were shoved aside to make more living space, or Lebensraum. Remember that? So Nazis occupied lands of economic importance and raided and looted them, kind of making their own European colony. To counter the resistance in occupied lands, they usually shot hostages or tortured prisoners. The Nazis planned centered on the people of these occupied countries. In the 1930s, they would build concentration camps where they would send thousands of Jewish people / political opponents. They would include many Poles, Soviet Slavs, among others, to work as slave laborers, prisoners who were poorly fed and worked to death and were subject to experiments. Here you have Nazi propaganda, blue hair, Aryan race. The German student. I don't know what that means. Kampf, struggle for the Führer and Volk culture, people, Volk. If you know German, translate it. Here's a concentration camp. Jews had to wear as we know from the Nuremberg laws, they had to wear the Yellow Star of David. Put into ghettos, or they're put into ghettos first. At the same time, Hitler pursued a vicious program to eliminate, kill all those he thought were racially inferior, mainly Europe's Jews. Remember, he put the blame of World War I on them. They needed a scapegoat. So he will target other groups who didn't meet Aryan race standards, Slavs, the Romas, or AKA Gypsies, homosexuals, and the disabled. Political and religious leaders who spoke out against him were also persecuted. At first, they were forced into ghettos. I just said that. And then into concentration camps. By 1941, they devised this, quote, final solution of the Jewish problem, a genocide of all European Jews. EU, if you don't know, stands for Europe. Not the European Union, just Europe. To accomplish this, they will set up 6 death camps in Poland, They would ship these undesirables to the camp designed for the most efficient way of killing millions of men, women, and children. So here's a ghetto. It will be blocked. Couldn't come. You could go in and out, but you have to wear your yellow Star of David. So the Holocaust. As prisoners reached the camps, they would be stripped of their clothes and valuables. Heads would be shaved. Women and children separated from the men. The young, the elderly, and the sick were chosen for immediate killings. Within a few days, they would be rounded up in the shower rooms and gassed. They would be promised of a shower. They would go to the shower, gas instead. The others would be worked to death or for perverse medical experiments. I already said that. And by 1945, 6 million Jews had been massacred in what is known as the Holocaust. Also, 6 million others were killed as well. Not just 6 million Jews, but total bringing up to 12 million people killed under Hitler's decision. Jews will resist until the very end, and by July 1942, the sending of Polish Jews from the Warsaw Ghetto to the Treblinka death camp occurred at 5,000 people a day. So here you have separation of the women and children to the men on one side. And a good representation of this is, I believe, one of the X-Men movies. I don't know which one. And yeah, I want to say Magneto was a part of it. I don't know. Maybe I'm spoiling it for you, but one of them begins with them on a train, crammed in a rail car, going to a death camp, and them being separated. And then this person just, maybe it's not Magneto, but this person just like destroys as he sees people being burned. Here's a shower that is in this is what it looks like today. Spoiler, there's some graphic photos, so if you don't want to look at these, you could fast forward the video. But here's the piles of people, piles of dead bodies, gassed. Anywho, in some cases, friends, neighbors, even strangers would protect these Jews. Italian peasants hid Jews in their villages. This is kind of represented, what's that movie? Inglourious Bastards. If you've seen that movie, Quentin Tarantino, it's a good film. What's his name? Brad Pitt's in it. Denmark and Bulgaria saved almost all their entire Jewish populations. They kind of disagreed with what Hitler was spewing off. Many people pretended not to notice what exactly was going on. Some even became collaborators and cooperated with the Nazis. In France, the Vichy governments helped send thousands of their Jews to their deaths. And strict immigration policies in the Western countries prevented Jews from seeking refuge, saying, "No, you can't move here. Go somewhere else." It's kind of messed up because even though you want to protect yourself from, we're not hiding Jews, we don't want Hitler to invade us, you're part of the problem. And many Western countries knew what was going on, and they decided not to do anything. So the scale of the Holocaust cannot be equaled in history. The Nazis set out to destroy Jews for no other reason than their ethnic, religious heritage. And today, the record of this slaughter is a vivid reminder of the monstrous results of racism and intolerance. So don't repeat it. Here's some Holocaust survivors. They would have bloated guts due to, not eating nutritious diets. And here you have mass graves because the Germans didn't know what to do with all the dead bodies in order to get rid of the evidence, because they knew that the Americans and the Russians were closing in. Dig massive graves, put them all in, bury them. All right. Sadly, that's a sad note to leave on, but we have to skirt over to Japan. Japanese forces took control across Asia and the Pacific. The mission was to help Asians escape their Western colonial rulers. Remember, you have spheres of influence over there. The real goal, however, was to have a Japanese empire in Asia. So the Japanese treated the Chinese, the Filipinos, Malaysians, and others with brutality and torture among civilians throughout the East and Southeastern Asia. They would seize crops, destroy cities and towns, made their locals into forced slave laborers, At first, they were seen as liberators, but soon changed. They wanted to make an Asia for Asians, and not going to happen. In the Philippines, Indochina, Vietnam, and elsewhere, nationalist groups would wage guerrilla warfare against the Japanese invaders. You have what's called the Rape of Nanking or Nanjing. And it's much like the Holocaust, except what it sounds like. So it's just of that in the city where the Japanese would go in, kill all the males, rape all the women and children, kill them all. It's probably not a good description to call it a rape of Nanking, but it is called that in history. Sorry about it. And you're about to see some more graphic photos. So here you have some dead non-Japanese people, mainly the Chinese. And here you have Japanese soldiers posing. Look at what we did. Here are some dead babies, sad. Here are Japanese soldiers practicing on live targets, practicing their bayonet skills. And here are more disgusting photos that you can look at your own leisure. All right, so you have the Lend-Lease Act. So when the war officially broke out in 1939, the U.S. declared neutrality. Though many held isolationist feelings, many sympathized with those who fought the Axis powers. FDR looked for ways around neutrality acts to provide aid to Britain, as they were the only ones who were fighting Hitler. So in March 1941, FDR persuaded Congress to pass the Lend-Lease Act and allowed him to sell or lend war materials to any country whose defense the president deems vital to the defense of the U.S. So the defense of the U.S. depends on the defense of the British, so we're going to send them aid. The U.S. would not be drawn into the war, but they would become, quote, the arsenal of democracy, supplying arms to those who are fighting for freedom. You have the Atlantic Charter. To further support, FDR met secretly with Churchill on a warship in the Atlantic, 1941. The two issued the Atlantic Charter, which set goals for the war, the final destruction of Nazi tyranny, and for the post-war world. I believe this is after Hitler failed to invade Britain. Context, August 1941, that's after. They pledged to support the, quote, rights of peoples to choose the form of government in which they live, and called for, quote, a permanent system of general security, because the League of Nations suck. And here you have the two, FDR and Churchill. So Japan seeks out vital resources. When the war broke out in 1939, Japan sought to take over European possessions in Southeast Asia. These possessions held vital resources like oil, rubber, and tin, which would prove to be vital for fighting against its war against the Chinese. In 1940, Japan moved into French Indochina and the Dutch East Indies. To stop Japanese aggression, the U.S. kind of did it on themselves. They banned war materials such as iron and steel and oil to Japan. And Japanese leaders saw this move as an attempt to interfere in Japan's sphere of influence in Asia. However, U.S. and Japanese leaders will meet to ease the tensions, but extreme militarists like General Hideki Tojo hoped to expand its Japanese empire, and the U.S. was getting in their way. So with talks at a standstill, General Tojo ordered a surprise attack. So most famously, you need to know, December 7, 1941, Japanese airplanes bombed the American fleet at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. The attack took over 2,500 lives and destroyed battleships and aircraft. The next day, FDR said that the attack on Pearl Harbor will be, quote, a day which will live in infamy. He will ask Congress for a declaration of war. December 11th, Germany and Italy both declared war on the U.S. as part of being Japan's allies, Axis powers. So to war we go again. And here's, I think these might be taken from the Pearl Harbor movie. But yeah, you have boats sinking, boats being destroyed. Here's some actual footage. I think this is the USS Arizona. And yeah, destruction, more destruction. First time America had ever been attacked. And here's the USS Arizona. It was a vital ship, a vital battleship. And yeah, I wish I had more time to speak to you about this, but if you want, we can go over it a little bit more. But yeah, Pearl Harbor. Such a sad day. So the height of the Japanese Empire. In the long run, the attack on Pearl Harbor would be a serious mistake as Hitler's invasion of the Soviet Union, but in the months after Pearl Harbor, possessions fell to the Japanese one by one. Japan took the Philippines and other islands held by the U.S. the very same day, overran the British colonies of Hong Kong, Burma, Malaya, and deeper in the Dutch East Indies and French Indochina. And by 1942, the Japanese Empire stretched from Southeast Asia across to the Pacific Ocean. And this is at the height, 1942. All Japan. All right. Whew. That was a long one. I sorry about it. I know I got a little wordy about talking about the Holocaust and other stuff, but like I said, it was important. It was a long lecture. I apologize for the length. But anywho, your homework is to do page, 474, 3 through 5. Hopefully you did enjoy that. And if you did, make sure you smash that like button. And yeah, I'm just gonna get out of your hair now because that was a lot of notes. Anywho, as always, stay safe, wash your hands. Peace.